A lot of people believe becoming wealthy requires a special kind of life, a high-paying career, an elite degree, connections in the right rooms. But a few years ago, I came across a story that quietly challenges that entire belief. It wasn't about a tech founder or a hedge fund manager. It was about a janitor. For decades, this man worked cleaning floors and emptying trash bins at a gas company. He lived in a small house, drove an old car, wore the same simple clothes most days. Nothing about his life looked extraordinary. Most of the people around him probably assumed he was struggling financially. But when he passed away, something surprising happened. People discovered that this quiet janitor had built a net worth of over $8 million. No lottery win, no inheritance, no sudden business success, just a lifetime of small, ordinary decisions with money. And when people hear stories like this, the reaction is usually the same: confusion. How is that even possible? Because in our culture, wealth is usually associated with visible success, expensive houses, luxury cars, big careers. But the truth is, those things often have very little to do with actual financial independence. And that janitor's story reveals something deeper about how money really works in the real world. It's not usually about intelligence, and it's rarely about income alone. More often, it's about behavior. The janitor's name was Ronald Read. He spent most of his working life in Vermont doing two very ordinary jobs. First as a gas station attendant, later as a janitor at a department store. Nothing about those careers comes with a massive paycheck, but Ronald Read had a habit that most people underestimate. He saved consistently, and more importantly, he invested. Whenever he had extra money, he quietly bought shares of solid companies that paid dividends, companies that quietly grew over decades. He wasn't trying to time the market, he wasn't chasing the next hot investment, he simply bought good businesses and held them for a very long time. And this is where most people miss the real lesson. When people hear the word millionaire, they imagine huge income or lucky timing. But the uncomfortable truth is that wealth often grows slowly and invisibly, so slowly that it almost feels boring, which is exactly why most people abandon the process. Because our brains are wired to respond to immediate rewards. A new phone today feels more exciting than a slightly larger investment account 30 years from now. A bigger apartment feels more meaningful than an invisible increase in net worth. But Ronald Read's life followed a completely different rhythm, one built on patience. Think about how money decisions usually happen in everyday life. Someone gets a raise. Suddenly, the apartment gets a little bigger. The car gets upgraded. The lifestyle quietly expands to match the income. At first, it feels harmless, even reasonable. After all, you worked hard for that raise, but something subtle happens during that process. The financial margin disappears. Instead of extra income creating freedom, it creates new obligations. Higher rent, higher car payments, higher expectations. And over time, those upgrades slowly lock people into a lifestyle that requires constant income just to maintain. This pattern has a name: lifestyle inflation. And it's one of the quietest forces keeping millions of people financially stuck. Not because they're irresponsible, but because the upgrades happen gradually, one decision at a time. Meanwhile, someone like Ronald Read was playing a completely different game. When his income increased, his lifestyle barely changed. That gap between what he earned and what he spent quietly grew larger over time. And that gap is where financial independence is born. Now here's where the psychology becomes interesting. People often assume that wealthy individuals must think about money constantly, but in many cases, the opposite is true. They simply remove certain decisions from their life entirely. Ronald Read wasn't waking up every day wondering whether he should spend or save. That decision had already been made years earlier. Saving and investing were simply the default. And once a behavior becomes a default, it stops requiring willpower. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't negotiate with yourself every night about whether it's worth doing. It's just part of your routine. Money habits work the same way. If spending becomes the automatic response to higher income, lifestyle inflation quietly takes control. But if investing becomes the automatic response, something else begins to happen. Time starts doing the heavy lifting. And that's where one of the most misunderstood forces in finance enters the story: compound growth. Not fast growth, not dramatic growth, just steady, patient growth over long periods of time. The kind that feels almost invisible year to year, but becomes enormous over decades. Imagine two people starting their careers at the same time. Both earn similar salaries, Both live in the same city, but their financial habits slowly move in different directions. One treats every raise as permission to upgrade life immediately. The apartment improves, the vacations get bigger, the car payment appears. From the outside, this person looks successful. Life seems comfortable. The other person does something less exciting. When income increases, most of the extra money quietly goes into investments. Their lifestyle improves slowly, but far more cautiously. For years, the difference between these two lives might barely be noticeable. In fact, the investor might even appear less successful. But something powerful is happening behind the scenes. Every invested dollar begins generating earnings. Those earnings generate more earnings. And slowly, the momentum builds. This is the quiet magic of compound interest. It doesn't reward speed, it rewards time and consistency. And Ronald Read gave his money something most investors never do: decades. Another surprising part of Ronald Read's story is how little attention he seemed to give his wealth. Neighbors described him as quiet, unassuming. He clipped coupons, wore a worn coat, parked the same modest car outside his home for years. If you passed him on the street, you probably wouldn't think twice, which reveals something uncomfortable about how we judge financial success. We tend to measure wealth by what we can see: the house, the watch, the car. But those things often represent spending, not financial strength. True wealth usually hides in places no one can observe: investment accounts, retirement funds, assets quietly growing in the background. And that difference between visible spending and invisible wealth creates one of the biggest illusions in modern life. People compare their behind-the-scenes finances with other people's highlight reels. And that comparison quietly pressures them into financial decisions that look successful, but delay real freedom. Ronald Read never played that comparison game. He didn't need to look wealthy. He simply focused on becoming wealthy. When Ronald Read passed away, most people were stunned by what they discovered. His investments had quietly grown to more than $8 million. And perhaps the most remarkable part of the story came afterward. Instead of leaving that money to distant relatives or luxury estates, he donated most of it to local hospitals and libraries in his community, places that had quietly shaped the life he lived. Think about that for a moment. A janitor, someone whose career most people would overlook, left behind a financial legacy that funded medical care and education for thousands of people, not because of extraordinary income, but because of extraordinary patience. And when you step back and look at the entire story, one realization becomes clear. Money is rarely about brilliance. It's about behavior repeated over time, small decisions, quiet discipline, and the willingness to let time do what it does best. Which raises a deeper question most people never stop to ask. If building wealth is often about behavior, why do so many intelligent, educated people still struggle with money? In the next video, we'll explore a surprising pattern behind that question, and why even very smart people regularly make financial decisions that quietly work against them.